Hi everyone, my name is Mary Rains and this is my assignment for teaching and training unit. Before we get started, here's a little bit of context into what I'm doing and how I've set this up. First off, the unit I'm going to outline for you guys would be the argumentative writing or the argumentative essay. It ends with our district writing assessment, which is an argumentative essay that our district asks us to assign to our students each year. This lasts about 3 weeks, but that's give or take depending on the demographics of kids that we have. The two main unit goals that I have for my kids would be one, that students will be able to write an argumentative essay, and then two, within that, students will be able to state a claim and support their claim with relevant and reliable evidence. So not like bringing it down a little bit, can they state a claim? Can they actually pick out that argument and then support themselves? The student demographics, I have about 15% of my kids on an IEP, and that's actually down from last year. However, I have 67% of my kids that are more than one grade level below, and I have several kids that are even like 3 or 4 grade levels below this year. And so even though they're not identified, there's a lot of needs and accommodations happening throughout my class. And that's also why I decided to do some of the things that I decided to do this year for this unit. The model of instruction that I decided to do is the 9 events of instruction. I chose this basically because I feel like as educators, these are all the things that we try to do to really ensure the success of our kids. And so I really try to do all of these when I'm planning my lessons and when I'm planning my units. And then the last bit of context or background information that I thought was important was basically the playlist that I have set up in my class. They're very self-paced and like everything's pre-fronted. And I think especially with a unit where we have so many different needs, it's nice to give kids the freedom to work at their own pace and to not hold that against them. Now, they don't always just work by themselves or work at their own pace. Like there's a lot of small groups that come into it and all of that so that people generally keep up. But for those students that maybe don't need a lot of help, instead of like having them slow down their pace, they're able to keep working. And so that's really what the playlists are, but I'll go over more of what that is when I get into my lessons. And I thought that the ISTE component that really matched it was being the educator, number 2A, which basically says that kids take ownership of their goals and really take ownership of their learning. And I think that's really what we see happening here a lot on the playlist. So going back to the 9 events of instruction, to gain attention, basically this unit is murder mystery themed, which was not something that I started out with. Staff members are involved, so all 11 suspects of the murder mystery are staff members. The person that was killed is a staff member. I also brought in guest speakers, and I have some pictures that I'll show you later, but they become police officers and detectives, and so I actually had a police officer come in and talk to them, and we had a paramedic because there was a whole medical side of it come in and talk to them, and the kids loved that. Actually, this week, because we just transitioned into being lawyers, they are going to get to actually speak to a lawyer, and they're going to take some notes on just how to outline an argument. And I'm really excited to see how well that goes because they're pretty excited about it. And then I also tried to incorporate fun things like scavenger hunts because I build up that idea of they're collecting evidence. And so they actually go around and find pieces of evidence, and they really like that. To inform the learners of their objectives, I actually post them on the board. So they're there like all week, and if they change, I change them. They're posted on the Bellwork slides, so when they come in, they always have slides that tell them exactly what to do and the expectations for the day, and the goals are always posted there. I basically remind them every single time we do something why we're doing it and how it fits into the larger picture. And then the other way that they know their goals would be on what I call detective notebooks, and I tried to share all of these resources with you guys. So they get these detectives notebooks. They And then on the first page, we always go through it on Monday. And I go through and say, hey, to like this week, these are your goals. And so we'll like read them together. And then I'll go into the weekly schedule and I'll say, okay, here's how you're going to apply that. Here's how you're going to be able to make that happen this week. Or for in this one, it was actually 2 weeks because it was a shortened week, a shortened week and a full week. But basically showing them how they're going to be able to meet those goals. And that happens like at the beginning of every week. So anyway, that's how I inform them of their objectives. I try to be very purposeful about each objective and each activity I give them when it comes to what I want their learning outcome to be. So I hope that they do and they feel like they are very well aware of why they're doing everything. Stimulating prior knowledge, a couple of things that we've done that we do to kind of like go off of what we've already learned. We do race paragraphs, so we really focused on citing evidence and explaining a lot when we did that. So they were able to make that correlation between that style of paragraph and applying it to the argumentative essay. We also have worked on informational text a lot this year, and so we just hit that really hard so that when we got to this unit, they would have that background knowledge. That wouldn't necessarily be something they would have to think about. It would be more of the structure of the essay that we wanted them to focus on. And then fact versus an opinion is a standard that is from I think 4th grade, but it is such a good review for my kids, and we do it. And I didn't start doing it this way, but in reflection, I think it was such a good win for my kids in the beginning to see that early success. Like, oh, I know what a fact versus an opinion is. And then we just go from there and we just build from there. So those are just a couple of ways that I like to access the prior knowledge that they have. So presenting the content happens in a couple of different ways. And I do want to say I don't have like lesson plans like completely filled out. The reason being is because they are playlist style, so they like on any given day every kid could be doing something different depending on the pace that they're working or depending on what like the expectations are. But here's some ways that they get the information. So first off, we do roll call meetings, which I always like build up, is a style of meeting that like as a police or a detective they could have. So that's when we all come together, we all share information, and we get on the same page and we talk about and discuss things that we need to talk about so we all know what's going on. And generally these happen on Mondays and Fridays. And I will put them like they'll be in their notebooks. Let's see if I can get there. They'll be in their notebooks if there's going to be like a roll call meeting, so then we can like actually fill it out and go over it together. So like Monday roll call meeting. So then we go through each one of these questions so that I know they're on the same, like the right page. They know they're on the right page. They can share if they found out anything. They get really kind of into it, if I'm being honest about that. So those are like one way that I present the information to kids. Mystery logs is another. That's what we call our sources or our informational text that we're getting. And they're basically write up like interrogation documents. And so like here's just one example that I included, but they got like the background information, the alibi, like essentially this is like the transcript of the interrogation. I also had some teachers that did interrogation videos, so they got to learn how to look at like actual video sources, which because they'll have to use those sometimes, well not sometimes, they will have to use those throughout their like career in school. And so we have a few video sources that are incorporated in there, so they learn how to take notes on it and how to like cite it and all of that. They also have Newsella articles that they can read that are like may-dos, but basically they help figure out why we should believe the information that we're getting. So like when the police officer came in and talked to us, he gave us some helpful like information. Well, there was a Newsella article that they had and could go and access to help support their argument as to why he is a credible expert or credible source that we could use, those kind of things. Or just there's some on crime scenes and how to investigate, and so they could use any of that information. Um, I also used Edpuzzle videos and activities. So when it was more like independent, if I wanted them to get something, I would give them an Edpuzzle video, make sure there was questions along the way so that I could tell if they were doing it and if they were getting the answers right, or if they weren't, and then I could go in and I could help them. And then I also did, like, I found this year that you can do Google Forms and like create scavenger hunts. And so we did do that. And that's another way I presented information. And it was information that, again, was kind of from a random source, but they could cite it because it was being given by a credible source, which I told them I was a credible source. And then that interrogation video was the only credible source that we knew for sure. And they had to go through the checklist and figure out why the other ones should be trusted or not. And so that was kind of cool to see that too. But providing learner guidance, I have pre-printed a lot of videos to help with this. I have very specific small groups that I work with, especially like in my co-talk class. I've differentiated lessons and activities. Like those mystery logs that I posted on there are the standard ones, but there are like 3 or 4 detectives notebooks. There are like 3 or 4 different versions of that, each one with a different level of accommodation. Some of them, they don't get any accommodation. So like an example of this would be like if they have to take notes on the guest speaker, or if they have to take notes on something, they would just be given a slide that like had the title and then said notes. There would be some that had like very guided notes or like closed notes so you could like fill in the blanks. And then there was some that were just asked to like simply highlight the words that were highlighted on the screen or highlighted from wherever they got it. So it was very like depending on their levels. And that's mainly because we have several kids this year that it just the act of actually writing or typing is very hard for them. So like they would just copy it or they would just do something that was much more to their level. I also try to scaffold a lot and make sure that everything is building on each other, which goes into my next thing. All the assignments build or connect so they can see the correlations between everything. And I think that that really helps them as well. Eliciting performance, basically the things that I ask them to do would be like writing and taking notes, discussions and conversations. I try to have when we do roll call meetings like higher level thinking questions, or I always ask them a couple questions that really make them think about things so they're making those connections. And then again, reading and taking notes as well. Providing feedback, I provide rubrics for everything that I grade. And then grades is a really good way for them to get feedback from me immediately. And then just a lot of it is, at least as of right now, until they do the final like assessment or performance piece, would be that immediate feedback through discussions. That through talking and having those conversations, they're figuring out if they're right or wrong, or if they're doing it correctly or not, I should say. The assess performance or the assessment at the end would be the essay that they're going to have to write, and then they also have to do a speech and debate. Actually, going off of the goals that we have, at the end they should be able to um, write an argumentative essay, and they should also be able to state a claim and support themselves with evidence. So they're going to show me that they can do that through the essay and also through the speech. So actually getting up and presenting their like argument to the whole class. And again, rubrics are provided, so I did include the rubric on the final assessment for the unit right there. And then enhancing retention and transfer. I did not start doing this, but the last couple of years I've realized that if you don't use it, you lose it, especially when it comes to something this big. And so they will write multiple essay topics or be like writing on those, and they're going to be writing throughout the year. And I am trying to make it, in last year I think I did an okay job, but to where it fits into the curriculum. So I don't want it to be like some extra thing, but I want to find ways that I can have them write argumentative pieces on stuff that we're already